they gave me.
Take that shit off,
Give me mine.
Ain't no more free my nigga. Where you hoes?
Searching for answers 2 years after the homicide of Jerriny Caples. Our Zaria Oates sat down with the family about their search for the suspect and the grief they manage every day.
Please speak up for my sister, y'all. Please.
What happened to Jerriny Caples was something no family could have foreseen. She was found slumped in the back of a white Jeep Cherokee, motionless. Forensic reports confirmed. A single gunshot to the head took the life of the young mother, only 26 years old. A doorbell camera near the scene captured a figure leaving the car, carrying a brown backpack. His face was completely obscured. Only his hurried footsteps were captured in the blurry frame. Just 72 hours. 3 short days were enough to turn a smile into tears. A few days ago, Jerriny was still excited, full of hope when her boyfriend returned home after a long prison term. She waited patiently, believing that love and tolerance would bring a new beginning. But on the evening of November 11, 2021, it all came crashing down. Memphis police found Jerriny's body on Print Avenue. The mother of 2 would never see her children grow up, nor would she ever experience the happiness she had dreamed of during her years of waiting. The pain devastated the family. Her father, Jerry, could not understand why his daughter had passed away in such a tragedy. Relatives continuously expressed their feelings on social media, sharing tearful messages filled with loss.
He took my little sister for nothing, man. She do nothing to nobody.
And then the question rang out in the community. What really happened in the 72 hours that turned a reunion into tragedy? Who was the man with the brown backpack? And why did Jerriny, a woman who just wanted to find happiness, have to leave so quietly? On the afternoon of November 11, 2021, Jerriny Caples was still smiling brightly in the messages she sent to her friends. She shared her happiness when her boyfriend was released after serving his sentence, believing that this would be an opportunity for both of them to rewrite their future. That same evening, when the street lights shone down on Print Avenue, everything was still peaceful. No one thought that in the next few hours, a tragedy would quietly take shape. According to the investigation records, at about 11:45 p.m., a white Jeep Cherokee familiar to Jerriny's neighbors was recorded appearing near the apartment area. A residential camera across the street showed a man getting out of the driver's seat, walking hurriedly, carrying an MCM backpack. His face was hidden by a hood, moving straight into the darkness and disappearing from view. During that short period of time, no one heard any unusual sounds, nor did any signs of chaos leak out. It was that silence that made things even more unpredictable. By 1 a.m., on November 12, 2021, the Jeep was still sitting on the side of the road. The interior had turned into a closed scene where Jerriny was no longer responsive. Witnesses living in the neighborhood testified that they only saw the car's lights turn on and off, with no sounds of arguing. Police later confirmed that there was no sign of the victim trying to resist. The entire incident occurred in secret, leaving a big gap in the question. What really happened inside the car in just a few short minutes? All she knew was that, as soon as the figure disappeared from the camera, Jerriny's fate was also decided. From that moment on, the 26-year-old mother's entire life stopped at a familiar road, not far from her apartment. The fragmented details of the night of November 11 were later pieced together through surveillance data and witness testimony. But at the time, it was all a blur. A car that had stopped moving, a young woman who was lifeless, and someone who had left in the dark. It all happened in less than 2 hours, leaving Memphis with a heavy November night and the beginning of a haunting search for the truth. And from this moment, the next few days of Jerriny's family changed completely. What seemed to be a new beginning of love and hope quickly turned into tragedy, etched in the community's memory like an indelible scar. Early morning of November 12, 2021, an emergency call went out to the 911 operator. People around Print Avenue reported a white Jeep Cherokee parked erratically for hours. No one saw anyone get out. When patrol officers arrived, Memphis police immediately noticed something was wrong. The car was locked. The headlights were off. The interior was dark, casting an uneasy silence over the scene. At about 1:20 a.m., they decided to open the car door, and at that moment the truth was revealed. Jerriny Caples lay motionless in the back seat. A head injury had claimed her life. The scene was so quiet that everyone present was silent because no one thought that such a tragedy could happen in such a peaceful neighborhood. The area was immediately cordoned off. Red and blue flashing lights covered the small street, turning the quiet November night into a crime scene filled with investigators. Neighbors who had just fallen asleep were startled awake and stood silently at their windows, witnessing a scene no one wanted to see. To them, Jerriny was a friendly girl, a young mother who always drove her child to school and greeted her every morning. Now, that image was replaced by the terrible news that left everyone speechless. The news reached the Caples family overnight. Just 72 hours earlier, Jerriny had been beaming on the day of their reunion, hoping for a new chapter with her boyfriend who had just returned from prison. But that joy was incredibly short-lived. When the news broke, her family could not accept the truth. Jerriny, 26, a mother of two, was now nothing but memories and pain. The news spread quickly through local media. Reg Memphis and several regional newspapers reported on the incident on November 12, calling it a mysterious death with little initial evidence. There were no eyewitnesses, no gunshots, just a silent car and a life ended.
A loving mother, sister, and daughter now at the center of a murder investigation. Memphis police found the 25-year-old killed in the Nutbush neighborhood. The woman's family continues to mourn while police search for her killer in tonight's Manhunt Monday.
Police immediately opened a criminal case, treating it as one of the most serious incidents of that November. For the Memphis community, Jerriny's death not only sowed fear, but also left countless unanswered questions. Who was the man getting out of the Jeep? How did a woman who cared only for her family become a victim in her own neighborhood? In the chilly late autumn air, the yellow tape around the crime scene still trembled under the police headlights. Memphis did not sleep that night, and the story of Jerriny Caples began to spiral into a complex investigation where every little detail could unlock the solution to this terrible mystery. On the morning of November 12, 2021, Memphis Police Department investigators set up a cordon around the white Jeep Cherokee, the center of the entire incident. Yellow tape covered the small street, turning the familiar area into a strictly monitored crime scene. Every step and every click of the camera of the technical staff on the scene echoed clearly in the tense atmosphere. Forensic experts began collecting physical evidence. However, the initial results were disappointing. No blood was found outside the back seat, no signs of a struggle. Even fingerprints and DNA recovered from the car were too faint to be of any value for a definitive identification. This made investigators even more convinced that the killer had prepared carefully and moved quickly after committing the crime. Meanwhile, the digital team pulled data from surrounding security cameras. A nearby doorbell camera captured a blurry image, a man carrying a familiar object on his shoulder, leaving in a hurry. His face was covered. Only a fleeting silhouette in the frame remained as a clue. The autopsy, completed the same day, determined that Jerriny Caples died from a single gunshot wound to the head. There were no other injuries, nor signs of a struggle. The medical examiner concluded that the incident occurred in a very short period of time, leaving no opportunity for help or resistance. All of these details, a strangely empty space, faint traces, unclear camera images added to the mystery of the case. And among the countless unanswered questions, the familiar backpack and the blurry video became the key clues. paving the way for the next line of investigation. On the morning of November 12, 2021, after the scene on Print Avenue was sealed off, the Memphis Police Department announced the opening of a special investigation related to the death of Jerriny Caples. This case was considered serious because the victim was a 26-year-old young woman living in a peaceful community, not involved in illegal relationships or complicated social conflicts. Therefore, all initial hypotheses revolved around her personal relationships.
Have it out for show.
What's up, Jay? Great.
Man, take that shit off. Look at Leah. Oh, man, y'all got her money with. She ain't fucking with it.
The digital forensics team began combing through all surveillance footage within a few blocks of the crime scene. Images were pulled from doorbell cameras, security cameras from nearby convenience stores, and even traffic cameras. Most of the footage was blurry. The clearest frame captured only a man stepping out of Jerriny's Jeep Cherokee, carrying a familiar brown backpack. His face was completely obscured, making the facial recognition technology ineffective. In addition to the photographic data, the detectives focused on exploiting information from Jerriny's family and friends. They learned that, just 3 days earlier, her boyfriend had been released from prison. For many years, Jerriny kept faith and waited for him, hoping that when he was free, the two could rebuild a new life. But that reunion coincided with the tragedy just 72 hours later, forcing investigators to ask, is there a connection between this relationship and the sudden death? The first hypothesis that the police put forward was that the perpetrator could be someone who knew Jerriny and knew his habits. The timing, the quick departure from the scene, and the few traces left behind suggested a calculated action. At the same time, another possibility was also considered. This could be a random ambush, targeting the car or another person, in which Jerriny was just an unwitting victim. For days after the crime, police knocked on doors around the neighborhood looking for witnesses. But the answers were always the same. No one heard a gunshot, no one saw any conflict. Some residents only remembered car lights turning on and off, and then strange silence. This made all efforts to get witnesses fall flat. Forensic investigators were at a loss because the crime scene was almost unnaturally clean. There were no clear fingerprints, and DNA was inconclusive. Even the movement outside the Jeep was limited by light rain that night, washing away many potential details. It was this lack of evidence that made it difficult to move forward. News of Jerriny's death quickly spread throughout Memphis. Local newspapers picked up on the story, raising questions about the safety of the seemingly peaceful neighborhood. The Caples family repeatedly appealed to the public for information and begged authorities to provide answers. But despite their efforts, no breakthroughs were reported.
To my sister's house, I felt it. Something was wrong. And that's when the detectives told us we had to stay there for a minute. When they said that, I already knew. I put my sister in a casket, man. We just want justice for her. That's it. I put my sister, y'all, please.
As of November 2023, the second anniversary of Jerriny's death, Memphis police have yet to name any suspects. There are no arrest warrants, no new evidence. Jerriny's case remains unsolved, one of many unsolved cases in Tennessee. For the family, this is not just a loss of a loved one, but also a haunting reminder that justice is still pending. Every detail in the file, from the glimpse of the video, the distinctive backpack, to the coincidence of the boyfriend's release, was like a missing piece of a puzzle. They created an unfinished picture that investigators, no matter how hard they tried, could not complete. And so, to this day, the Jerriny Caples case remains quietly on the unsolved list, a haunting memory for Memphis in the cold November days. Since the night of November 11, 2021, Jerriny Caples' case has remained on the investigator's desk with the cold words, "Unsolved." For months, her family has held out hope that Memphis police would soon find the culprit, that a trial would be held to clarify the whole truth. However, with each passing day, that hope gradually became a lingering burden. In November 2022, exactly 1 year after Jerriny's death, the Caples family held a small memorial service. They lit candles, placed her picture on a wooden table in the local church, and prayed for justice. But instead of sitting in a courtroom, they sat together in silence, with no lawyers, no jury, just the memory of the gentle girl who had vanished. Throughout 2023, Memphis continued to see a steady stream of new cases, and Jerriny seemed to be lost in the long list. The family refused to stay silent. They appeared on local television, gave interviews, and urged anyone with any clue to contact the police. Each time they appeared, Jerriny's mother repeated the same phrase: "We just want the truth. We just want to know what happened to our daughter." In the legal system, a trial requires an arrest and a clear indictment. But as of late 2023, Memphis police have yet to release any names. There are no indictments, no proceedings. In other words, there has been no trial, and the sentence for the perpetrator of this tragedy remains a blank. The heartbreaking thing is that justice is hanging in the balance. For the Caples family, each day of waiting is another form of trial, one where they have to face their loss, but have no answers. Jerriny's young children are growing up without their mother, and in their eyes, the yearning for justice is all the more painful. In November 2024, exactly 3 years after the murder, the Memphis community once again held a candlelight vigil. The candles formed a circle, reflecting the determination of family and friends. They would not give up until they found the truth. But the truth, so far, has not been enough to bring anyone to justice. The death of Jerriny Caples, which occurred on the night of November 11, 2021, not only ended the life of a young mother, but also left an unfillable void in the hearts of her family and the Memphis community. 2 young children grew up without their mother. Her elderly parents lived with endless pain, and her friends still feel pain when they remember her gentle smile. The case also became a mirror reflecting the fragility of happiness and faith. Jerriny once put her heart into love, believing that waiting and sacrificing would bring a new beginning. But just 3 days after that hope was lit, tragedy struck, taking with it everything she had cherished. 3 years on, the brown backpack and the blurry figure in the camera footage remain a chilling reminder that justice has not been served. The question, who did it, is not only a concern for the family, but also a concern for the entire community. Memphis residents still emphasize, silence only prolongs the pain, while the truth can bring peace. Jerriny's story is not just an open case, but also a message to all of us. If anyone knows anything, speak up, because justice can only exist when the truth is revealed. In that silence, the lingering concern for justice becomes the loudest echo, leading directly to the question: what can we learn from this case?